Hey, um, thank you for being here. Some of you recognize, some of you don't, new, and been to some other ones. My name is Billy Freeman, WL4B, comm unit leader, trained comm unit leader, and trained comm technician. I'm an EMT, retired from the Memphis Fire Department after 28 years. And I spent 25 plus years on the FEMA urban search and rescue teams, mostly as a comm. My friend Jelly, one of the best friends, and I've been downrange. I had 31 national deployments. So I put this together. This is a smaller version of what I put together for the urban search and rescue communication specialist course. And it's essentially, I'm going to touch on some tactical comms that we've done downrange to support the missions that you may not have seen. It sometimes goes against common radio thinking, right? And we call it mud and wire. We coined that phrase in 2001, right before 9/11, teaching comm specialist course, and it's just about mud and wire, making it work. There's no box to think out of, there's no box. And so, these are kind of some of the highlights of some odd things that we've done, to say the least. So a lot of these courses, a lot of these little seminars that I do, the last one I taught or showed was I compared it to somebody that's downrange responding, but also it applied to just civilians that impacted by something. This one's more just communications downrange. So everybody needs to be able to communicate with the person they report to. Just because you have a radio doesn't mean you need to talk to every single person on the incident. The incident could be hundreds of miles, 5,000 square miles we've done before. I'm showing one earlier, 3,600 square miles. So, but as long as you can talk to the incident command system, those of you that said if we're in that session, you have one supervisor. You can to communicate with that supervisor. Most of the time, we can get by with this with simplex. We always say simplex to complex. Start with what works, and add to it as it doesn't work. One person that needs to be able to talk to anybody on this, it's what we call a task force leader. That in the incident command system, it could be strike team leader or task force leader or incident commander or whoever. So there's a hierarchy there. But the bulk of the people only need to be able to communicate with the people that are standing beside digging in the hole with them and their supervisor. So never say you can do something when you can't do it, or nail down a time to when it's going to be done and don't complete it. It's very hard to be precise in what we call wide area, on the fly tactical communications. The military doesn't even do it good without satellites. And so it's very difficult to do. We move incredibly fast. Urban search and rescue team, if you've heard this, I apologize, but we're an 80-person team, a Type 1 and Tier 1 team that specializes in collapsed buildings. So if this building's down on you, you want one of these FEMA urban search and rescue teams here, because we're fully equipped. But surprisingly, with 15 vehicles, 80 people, 80,000 pounds of equipment, we can move incredibly fast. So that binary thing is difficult as a communications person to keep up with. One of the comp Cs, the comp technicians, you have a comp leader and a comp technician. They're always be near the forward booth, what we call the booth, base of operations, or the command post, the forward command post. And they're there to head off any problems. What about the ISP? So that's an overhead team for the incident for USAR. So we're going to talk about Logan going to a situation we had for a local, meaning one spot. And we're going to talk about escalating tornado outbreaks are notorious escalating events, and so is flooding. So we'll talk a little bit about those. And then we're going to do wide areas, hundreds of miles. So I spent 28 years on a ladder truck. In the fire world, the truck people do cut holes in roofs for one thing, to ventilate buildings. So you never went up the ladder with your saw without two things. One, that you tested your saw, roof saw, and that you have your axe with you. Because just because that saw started doesn't mean, that you went up. So you always test your equipment, every single piece of it you're going to use downrange before you go downrange. Because going downrange for us could be a helicopter flight that drops you off and flies out, because those air assets don't sit on the ground when you're in that situation. And yeah, this time, y'all been here long enough to know what I've already said. And or you may get a boat going somewhere that drops you off. And so one of my favorite sayings is you've got to be prepared to run what you brung. Because there's never, wait a minute, come back. I need to go back and get a screwdriver or something like that. So you test it, you put it together, you hit it, and you go with it. You can't bring everything. I don't care if it's a Chinook plane. Anybody ever been on a Chinook? Maybe two-headed house trailer. They're big. You can put vehicles on them, but when you're loading up a bunch of equipment for everybody that's doing equipment, you're only going to be able to take so much, and you don't know what's going to come back and get you. It may be half a dozen Blackhawks, which is a smaller package, obviously, than a Chinook. So anyway, test on that. All right, so single operations. This one that's the inside of the Pentagon. I'm responding to the Pentagon. Our team responded to the Pentagon. What kind of communications problems could you imagine from that scene?
Radios don't penetrate some of the walls.
Well, yeah, but the walls are gone.
Yeah.
But go.
Multiple agencies talking over each other using.
Well,
Yeah.
no, that's a story that I could get into for about an hour about that one. All that debris is mostly metal. Ductwork, piping, everything. They couldn't talk 100 foot on Centrals. Now, it's not difficult to talk 100 foot. They couldn't talk 100 foot there on Simplex. The whole area, and I'll show it in a minute, but they couldn't talk there. So how do you overcome that before the comm person can come in and upgrade, upsize it? How can you overcome that?
Have relays.
Exactly, 100%. So there's one thing about fire and police and EMS folks is we know in our territory where we're working, we know where the dead spots are. Just like most people know where the dead spots for your cell phone is around your house or something. We know where they are. Well, they learned exactly where that line was, and they would pop somebody there, and they would relay. because they're working in that. So the Pentagon, I saw the Pentagon is a Pentagon shape, 5 sides. I don't know if anybody ever been to seen the Pentagon up close. Each wedge, that's called a wedge, is 1,000 foot. It's a mile around, just short of a mile around. And so they're working in the plane, the airplane, I promise you, airplane. I was an airplane mechanic in the Army and know how to look at an airplane, and I know what airplane seat looks like. Well, the airplane impacted this whole wedge. And so we had come up with an idea. Now, back up a little bit. They're in full PPE, personal protective equipment, respirators, and everything. There's safety officers in there. You can't just go wandering in the building and make a shortcut to somewhere. We call them dots, safety dots. You could move from this one to this one until you were told to move to that one, until you were told to move that one, because there's equipment moving in and out of there. So you throw all that in place. So here's the Pentagon. Here's our base of operations right there. The worker is inside there. It's 5 stories, and there are 5 rings from inside to outside. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo. Echo was in height. Between Echo and Delta is the only ring that goes all the way to the ground, open sky. The rest of them had shorter buildings in it. And so we could not talk to them. We're talking about 2001, and so we could not talk to them from that tent. So it was about 3,500 people. We couldn't talk to there. They couldn't talk that 100 to 200 foot across there inside. One of the problems is the Pentagon is that wedge had just been rebuilt, renovated, and they increased the RF restriction for the building, meaning they had what's the cage? Further cage, so that RF couldn't get in or out easily. So there lies another problem. So we're trying to figure out what to do. And so we came up with, we put a repeater down between the rings. And I'll show a picture of it in a second. Because I needed, as the comm unit leader, I needed who to be able to talk was most important.
You ever stood on
Huh? Not two, who needed to be able to talk to their supervisor. People inside the building. It's all about safety. The logistics and plans and medical, they're all safe right here. They're not safe in the building. They need to be able. And so we put this repeater up. So in between, this is the E-ring. This is the inside of the E-ring, the last ring, looking from the D ring to it. That's where the airplane actually did not punch a hole that big. It crushed out the building. We opened the hole up to make it big enough for bobcats and stuff to get in and start pulling debris out. So we went in the building, we went to the D ring, we went up 3rd story, and we're in the office. That whole ring is evacuated. All those rings were evacuated. We went in there, we put a repeater in that office where it had power. We hung an antenna out the window. I took a desk lamp, how you extend a desk lamp, and clamped it to the window sill where it would clear out the wall and hung vertical antennas, one pointing that way and one pointing that way. We had mobile. We used, I know what a base station adapter is for a mobile antenna. So you can unscrew a mobile antenna off of an EMO mount and screw it on this base station adapter in the sky, radials. And then you can strap it to a pole. So we had two of those hanging down. And we use UHF and we have 9 megahertz of split for our repeaters. So repeater sense wasn't a problem. We didn't have to have that huge, separation. And it worked like a charm because we were able to bounce that signal in there. Back at the base of operations, stuck a pole up with a Yagi and pointed it at it, and they could hit that repeater. When you hit it with a handheld, you could hit it with that. My logistics guys could talk to them because we were going through tools. The Home Depot and other places were coming in about truckloads, bringing in tools that were tearing up. So anyway, that's just one of those weird things. Now, a little caveat to it is, we run 24-hour operations, 2 teams for the first 12 of the day, 2 teams the second 12 of the day. The night shift came to me and said, hey, the repeater went down. We actually had 2 repeaters there, 1 for each team. He said, we don't know, we don't have time because it's not, you can't just, hop up out of your chair and walk into the building. You have to go through a whole big accountability process. You have to deck out with your PPE. You have to go, it's a whole big deal. So we're like, it was really good. But once again, it's temporary stuff. So you have to, keep an eye on it. And what he said was it just got really scratchy, dirty. Now, at the time we were using not P25, not digital stuff. We were just using regular analog UHF. So you had that you had that area where it could get scratchy, you could still hear it. Nowadays, it gets scratchy, it just cuts right off. So what we found was, remember I talked about the Bobcats going in there and picking up the debris and bringing it out so we could shore it up and everything. But what they were doing was bringing, and this is a pretty wide space between the 2 rings. They were bringing it out, piling it up on the wall, on the D-ring wall. Bringing it out, piling it up on the wall. And eventually piled up to where it touched the bottom of that antenna and grounded it. So those kind of things are just weird. Any questions on that? That was one of my first real setups. Unfortunately, circumstances were not great. That's a street in Kingwood, Texas, northeast side of Houston. That water's flowing. Probably, in my mind, in my opinion, the most difficult environment to support with comms is flood. Why?
Danger of electricity and water. Constantly moving.
Huh?
Constantly moving.
Constantly moving. And you got all those trees, and they can get where a walking group, and I'll show this in a little while, gets on the ground, and they can do about 5 miles, circle. And that's pretty easy. These guys can get 5 miles in 10 minutes in a boat. We're talking about an area that looks like it's a wilderness river. This is a Germantown kind of place. Very upscale. On the other side of those is a huge shopping, kind of like Wolf Chase. All underwater. And so you get out across that. Probably the worst place I've done in America is the northeast corner of South Carolina. They call them Pines or something like that. It's nothing but pine trees. Pine trees that never drop their leaves. Pine trees that have plenty of moisture in them. And pine needles that look like a wavelength on the radio. Almost impossible. So we had to come up with ideas on how to do this, and part of that was moving some equipment around. We used VHF, we used UHF, we went to VHF, we carried VHF radios. We went to VHF to do better across water. But we also had, I had gotten on the phone to call a friend and gave me the number of an FBI guy in Houston and gave me, he gave me a channel on a VHF voted system. That's a system that, it's a system of a lot of sites that talk to each other and they all sync. Jill can explain it way better than I can, but anybody ever been to Houston, Texas? It's 75 miles across Harris County. Our base of operations was 70 miles away. And so we were able to do some stuff. But flooding just will make it crazy because, just like you said, it moves too fast. Tony's not here, but that's what we were living in. Kelly was taking care of the teams and sending us equipment and everything that was 70 miles away. These people it's not like they lived in a flood zone. These reservoirs, we were pouring water out of your boot wet for 5 days. I mean, wet. We walked in water like this, wet. And so, did I say wet? They had opened up spillways caused most of the flooding to ease the pressure on the levels of the reservoirs. And these people went to sleep one night and woke up scrambling to the second floor of their house. And we were right in the middle of it. We were all trying to get out and we couldn't get out. And we got in the middle of it. We ended up rescuing 19 people out of one neighborhood. So it's finally dry, but that's our truck, We can move that thing along with the teams, but those boats, and that's a hard gig. It's a hard gig. And flooding, people, we had cell phones working more or less. But most of the people on these teams are firefighters. And they're used to doing this, not this. When they need help, they want to call this and talk to this, not this. And so it's a safety issue. I got a new truck now. Like a new truck? Here's another aspect to it. The whole city wasn't flooded. So family members, our primary mission on this particular day right here, we had a nursing home, a two-story nursing home that we were evacuating. Now, that's not the first time we had to do that. We did Katrina, and I'm telling you, it's because most of us are EMTs, paramedics, and stuff. It's a little easier for us, but that's an incredible group of people to try to pick up and boat out. But you got to make sure that your comms is tight so that they can, when somebody just crashed on us, and doctor, we need one of the docs up here. We carry doctors with us. But all these people complicate your movement, your actions, because they're just trying to figure out about their loved ones. But that's just all part of that team. I put Tim Lake in there. Sometimes getting higher is better. Sabine Pass, you'd be surprised what you can get, the mileage you can get out of Intercoastal Waterway Bridge on flat. I bet we got 20 miles out of that repeater for the handheld. It was nice. It's a 25-watt repeater. Sometimes you just got to figure it out. That's one of my best friends, my business partner. He's out of Texas. He's Katrina. He's got rental vehicle, and it's full of chargers, charging batteries, and 3 or 4 mobiles operating. There's not enough power in the rental vehicle to get that done, so it's strapped up on the generator on the roof, extension cord in there.
He did that
You'd like
more
yours.
than
Huh?
he did that more than once.
Oh, yeah. It was fun. He don't think anything about it. But I'm just kind of showing you all those weird things that you just have to think, oh, we gotta figure that out, because it happens just like that. I think we're getting to a really good one here. So sometimes you just stop and plop and put a command post together. A temporary command post. That's him with the hat on to the left. Sam's parking lot, Battery, Louisiana. You've got internet set up, telephone set up, computer set up for the plans folks, the logistics folks. Just popped it together in the middle of the parking lot. 4 or 5 hours, packed it up, we're gone. Probably wasn't. All right, light area, another, this is where it gets very interesting. So, most times, even if you're driving in a task force, the rescue components, search and rescue components of the task force, it's about 40 people, give or take. And so they'll get, you with them ICS bus, they'll get a geographic location to operate in. Okay, do this grid square, or do these grid squares. And so they're either doing what we call hasty searches, just kind of looking in the window or something and seeing and moving on, or they're doing primary searches, which is entering the building, or they're doing secondary searches, go back over what somebody looked at as a hasty or primary. And that's part of the fire service. We do that in the burning buildings. So boots on the ground, even with, we don't have enough to carry everybody around, or we got side by sides and trucks and different things. But that 5 miles is about what they can do in a day. Now that might be 1,000 homes. And it's it's very realistic for task force to do 1,000 homes depending on what level they're in. And that's marking, and moving on. Optimally, I want to get in the middle of it and set up something. That's a little much. Although it costs a little much for a simplex, but not necessarily a little much to the middle. But as well as I do, that whole, you're not going to do a perfect circle. It's not going to be a perfect circle. So we usually try to pop up a short mast, 10 or 15 feet, with some holes. We got some blue sky mast systems, the military grade, that are very nice. And we'll pop up a mobile. And the command element will be there and they can communicate with them. Sometimes we'll put a repeater up. A lot of times we don't have to put a repeater up, we'll need to because they're not necessarily able to talk to each other, just to talk to that, back up to that supervisor to report. But that's the way we think. That's a very realistic, so if you're ever seeing that in real life, somebody doing that's the way you're thinking. That 5 miles is a pretty good rule of thumb to be able to operate that. Texas, Hurricane Ike. We had 11 task forces. I was on the overhead team, the incident management team in Houston, but I was moving all over. Kelly, y'all were in Beaumont, up above Port Arthur, twice y'all were there. At that time, when y'all were there, I was in Port Arthur, so being passed. We had people in Galveston, Bolivar Peninsula, all the way across. You're talking 100 miles from there to there, 5,000 square miles. Having task forces, and at any given time, only 2/3 of those task forces were operating, 1/3 was sitting in staging, doing rehab. Hot, physical work and everything. But the interesting thing is, we don't have unlimited frequencies to use. We have to go through a frequency coordinator. Because we're not the only fair, what you say back there a minute ago, that talked about other agencies around, they're all sharing those frequencies together. And so, I mean, we've got 26, 30 or 30 something zones, we're in double letters, zones on the radio. Each one of those zones can hold 16. So we've got a lot of it's interop stuff. The federal stuff, I say all that to say, there were teams on the ground that were sharing a frequency. So when you're sharing a frequency, how in that picture right there do you overcome that problem with them overstepping each other? Geographic separation. They're running simplex or even a 25-watt repeater is not going to interfere from Port Arthur to Galveston. Or even Galveston to Houston. The operation wasn't going on in Houston, it was all down here, Texas City and all down here. But those are the kind of things you have to think about. Okay, I don't have enough channels on enough frequencies to go around. Can I use geographic separation to operate? And it doesn't have to be 100 miles. You can do 10 miles is very reasonable. In some cases 5 miles. I mean, just depending on we used to only have one simplex channel on the fire department back in the 90s. In Memphis and Mississippi, we hardly ever.
Jim Candy has two, right?
That's right. But they don't have simplex. Yeah. But anyway, we got two, yeah. We got 30 fire gun channels now. 29 or 30. So anyway, that's that wide area piece right there. Now, we have some devices called an MSAT. Mobile satellite, and we've had them since the 90s, and it's a push to talk. Works really well. Ever watch the crab fishing boats, the show, crab fishing boats? They're carrying those same radios, those same sat radios in there. You'll see them with it's a big handheld, and they're talking on because it's for the continent, it's for the United States and north and down south, but mostly the United States. Work real well, but they're not normal push-to-talk radio. It's not like you just push the button and talk. You have to push the button, let it catch the satellite, it beeps at you, you make your conversation, you release, it beeps, release it from the satellite, does the same thing on that. It's not for good tactical, but it's a great command in that, to be able to communicate. So we're always going to figure out some way to communicate. Starlink we've adopted Starlink. And that's changing the face of some of the way things are done. But that's a very normal hurricane footprint. Some of y'all may have seen this last time, but this is going to make my second trip up a 24-story building in the dark stairwell because there's no power. Putting the radio system up. Galleria building in Katrina. We got 50 miles, and I reckon we were 20-foot. We hoisted a 20-foot station master vertical. I was struck out now from one of my jobs that had hoist tools up to the building stuff. We drove down, in between the handrails, and just hoisted it up through the handrails as somebody walked up with a 20-foot station master. So, anybody know what this is? Because we're in southern Louisiana. There's all kinds of refineries. This is in Chalmette, Louisiana. And so, you see that right there? See that? That's duct tape. Is that the coax or the extension cord?
That's the extension cord.
Yeah. So this is this is one of these that's called cracking towers. It's where this is where they dissect all the different chemicals out of fuel. Down, it's an oven is what it is. So jelly, you want to know the story?
You're my buddy.
Jelly gets an issue with my partner, Pete Friedman. I'm off doing something else. And they got to go to Chalmette, Louisiana, which is south on the east bank of the Mississippi River, south of New Orleans. It's in what parish? Not New Orleans Parish, anyway. And
Where Sean, that's where the big civil war battle was.
Yeah.
Civil War. Near the cemetery has.
well, they've got about 3 or 4 foot of water all over the town with about that much oil on the top of it.
2.5 miles east of that location is the pipeline that runs from the Gulf of Mexico to the Memphis refinery. And it had a crack in it. That's where all the oil came from.
So they're trying to figure out how to communicate while they're down there helping the people down at Chalmette. And we say already put a repeater up on a fire truck aerial,
Exactly.
which exactly this. So anyway, so Jelly comes up with a great idea. Let's put it up on the cracking tower. Pete Friedman, he's funny. He says, okay, he said, what do you think? Who's gonna put it up there?
No, he said he didn't say anything, and I started up.
Oh, this room.
And then he goes, all of a sudden, he's up there. Used extension cord to pull, didn't have any rope with us, used a spool of wire we found in the maintenance shed, put a repeater on.
Now, it's a GR300, it's two GM300 radios in a box with a I-750 repeater controller and a power supply. And it ain't light.
It's 50 pounds.
Yeah, it's not big, but that power supply is a constant duty power supply, and so it's not light. So they hoisted that dude up there, Jelly's a fireman too, so firefighter too. So, well, I'll listen to the picture because that picture actually tells the story. The other picture actually tells the story. So there he is going up. Now, I'm just going to use this picture as an example. So there's these decks. So you put the repeater and the antennas and stuff on this deck. What kind of problems would you have putting an antenna up there? So, you got problems with having an antenna. So this thing is steel.
Or getting it up there,
Well, yeah, operationally.
operations.
How would the antenna operate?
Those, the metal of those buildings going.
So here's the thing we always look at. What do I need to get done? I need to be able to have a repeater where I can talk to Chalmette. I don't care anything about Joe's thinking. He don't care anything about behind him. He needs to be able to talk to Chalmette. Now, that's not a good radio practice right there. I'm not sure Tim would put, a fixed system up on that thing necessarily. At least not where it's blocked on, 270 degrees of it. But all he needed to do was talk from that location to hit that repeater and talk back to that location. So that's where you have to take into play. It's not gonna be perfect. We've got $100 million radio systems that aren't perfect. But that's the truth. That are engineered systems that are not perfect. There's holes, there's dead spots, there's all kinds of stuff. So you can't be, go ahead, Jeff. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say the whole, if Billy, it was a present from Billy to me, I get to ride the helicopter down. But, when we got down there, Pete and I talked about where we're trying to talk, and so we put on kind of on the northeast corner of that cracking tower. And the limitation to the height there is, if I could have gone up higher, is we didn't have that much extension cord. We had the generator on the ground to be able to fuel it. So we're up, so I'm up about, so it's 50 feet of extension cord, and then we have another 35 feet of coax, or coaxes. And, we set it up there and so the antenna's on the northeast, kind of the little northeast corner and it covers.
Yeah, you can still see the wire going up.
The bad problem is the whole thing that I got told about that was it was that I had to go through.
I know that, yeah. I had to go back and get it. I flew back over there with the helicopter, and Pete said, there it is. I said, well, go get it. He said, well, Joe said you get it.
No, Pete, poor Pete. Pete's a great guy, but he's afraid of heights.
We just like something. Just like that. Anyway, perfect doesn't come into the equation. Even near perfect doesn't come into the equation. All I need to do is to be able to accomplish what I need to do and nothing more. Because if I start trying to figure out how to make it perfect, I'm behind the curve. And I don't have enough, and I got enough quick. If we flew that down and go back to what I said, one box in an air ambulance, we couldn't take anything else. And everything fit in this one box, 2 foot, about 2 foot, what they are, but.
Hey, I did good. That repeater had great.
Oh, that repeater was bad. I still say, and so does he, he's the one that said it. That dude was bouncing off that thing, but it was deader than anything on the backside.
Directly behind me was the Mississippi River, the mouth of the Mississippi River. What's the medical ship Hope?
Yeah,
They had Hope Park back there to take care of a bunch of the residents of some of the cruise ships, housing evacuees. But then we went downtown later, and the fire department's radio had flooded out, and they had a 100-foot aerial that had flooded out, and we manually raised the ladder and stuck an antenna up 100 feet on the air to bring the fire department back up.
all right, so this was a landslide in Oso, Washington in 2010, maybe 11, 12. Y'all may or may not have heard of it. I got a call 2 o'clock in the morning, hey, you need to go to Oso, Washington. I said, where's that? I think everyone's taught me how to say Washington, not Washington. I said, I told my wife, she said, I gotta go to a landslide. I said, I'll be back in a couple of days. So if you see this, that's where the landslide, that's the original picture. That's called a slough. It had sloughed years ago. They had a lot of rain, all of that. It looks flat and not very tall, but it's pretty tall. It's in the Cascades and it sits on mountains on both sides of the valley down in the middle. And it's sloughed off the rock docs, we call them, the geological guys say. It took about 7 seconds and it filled that valley up. All those red marks are holes. And in the yellow line, it filled it up to 70 feet deep. And it looked like that. That's USAR teams. I gotta say one thing about it. That's Logan country, and those folks are bad to the bone about moving stuff. So you gridded everything off. Everything had to be moved out of that grid over to another grid. That grid was searched. That pile was put back over and marked. Another one was popped. It was very meticulous. And you can see they're standing, it's probably, 30, 40, 50 feet down with trees and houses and unfortunately bodies. 50 people. I think it was 50. Maybe not counting all of them. But we needed to talk. And so that's the first repeater we put up. We just cleaned it up in a more tactical repeater. We're going to be able to talk in that area. I throw that in there because I may or may not be in that picture. That's a Google flew overflight as if we were putting the repeater up. It's kind of cool. But irrelevant. We drew out what we needed to do. We were using BGAN button satellites to connect our repeaters together. That turned problematic. I didn't like it. It was too much Overwatch. I had to do it. So we found a helispot up on the side of this mountain. The helispot is the Forest Service puts these helispots in for wildland firefighting. Found a helispot that was close by, and we started putting up some Taffordine repeaters. And we also had these nice beautiful maintained roads up to these hell spots. CTAC, Seattle Tacoma Port Authority, brought their tower trailer in there. They needed to patch in air assets, into one of their, one of their system channels. So we have a lot of equipment up here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We had 6 repeaters out there. That's a lot, but it's not a huge footprint. About as big as that room out there, lady. What's wrong with that, Lieutenant? Is it wrong?
It doesn't work.
Why is it right? How about I say what it was at? We're up above the valley. Because if we didn't, it would work probably, but you're gonna lose most of what you're going straight up. So we tilt it down in the valley, omnidirectional. Pick up that one right. So I needed to make a command repair. I'm in Arlington. This is Darrington. This road is gone. It's a 2.5 hour drive around, almost to the Canadian border to get around. We needed to be able to communicate better. There was a cell tower, but it just didn't have the capacity we needed. So I had with that command repeater that we saw right there, I had a 3,600 foot peak in between there, 1376, and I'm at 170. I had a 3,600 foot peak. How did I get around that mountain? So earlier, the day before, I had been in this area right here and had seen a microwave reflector bolted to the side of the rock wall. It was it looked like it was about as big as this room. And I went, so I said, let me try something. So I had a tower trailer down in Arlington that I needed some height. I put a Omni simplex antenna right there and a Yagi right there. The simplex was for that area around my command post, which was just use simplex. It was patched in to the radio that was on the repeater frequencies with that Yagi, and I started figuring out how to point that thing to it. And sometimes it's good to just be lucky, because there's the slide area, there's the thing. And I turned it enough and bounced that something going off that 2300 foot peak. That's called ducking. I don't know that I could ever duplicate it again, but I got it work once, and that's all I need to do. And sometimes you just can't figure out. It's just try. It's just the automatic no if you don't try. I was lucky enough to have enough equipment to do it. That's it. And I'm just trying to get across something. It's incredibly fun, but it's just tasking on your brain sometimes to figure out how to do that. And hams can do that too. They do that kind of stuff too. They figured out stuff in Katrina to be able to communicate out of those hospitals to other people. And there was a lot of ham stuff going on in Katrina. Any questions? I know that looked like it was just kind of, hey, look what we did, but it's more than that. It's
So little ahead of this different story. East Tennessee, I'm gonna bring it up because I lived. There were ham operators in the top of the mountains over there that were taking care of health and welfare for those folks. And there was one gentleman who, Joe Lowenthal, if y'all know who that is, knows this guy. He was on top of the mountain, and he was taking care of messages to get into a big area up there. And he could talk 100 miles on whatever repeater he had on top of that mountain. So, I mean, the amateurs are the ones that carried most of East Tennessee for the first week.
So I'm a certified instructor for communications and comm unit stuff, and so I can give a certificate out through our company that is teaching stuff. If anybody's interested in having a certificate for this class, it's an awareness certificate. If you're interested in having one, I have a QR code, you can just fill it out. It's about 3 questions.
Just a comment.
Yes, sir.
When you go to these disasters, I went down to New Orleans after Katrina, our church group went down there to work on the seminary. And all we saw here on TV was the Ninth Ward. If you take your hand right now and look up what he's got on the screen, what you can see, they insisted we go over to the Ninth Ward. When you went down there, you're looking at it, you're not just
That's
looking.
right. That's exactly right.
And it was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
different when you see it.
It was up off of the foundation and moved it. I saw a truck sitting up on a fire truck. It had floated it up.
Well-
put it there. I mean, it was unreal.
You may have, I don't remember when I told this, but we picked up, I was with the Coast Guard, we picked up some people right outside Chalmette on the bank. There was a ferry crossing, and they got torn up, we picked them up. So when you pull up, and there's a husband and wife, 2 kids and a dog, and everything they own is in a plastic bag, that hits home. Because that can happen to somebody sitting in this room, any of us. All right, well, thank you for coming.